Right. Hello. Good morning. Um, yeah, all good, I guess. A little bit stressful morning. It's kind of annoying. Like you wake up and you feel that everything's going just fine. And okay, think I'm going to have an hour of stream today. It's like I can't imagine what happens. And then suddenly the routine breaks, and then everything just falls to shit. And for some reason, like our daughter doesn't want to get dressed. And when we finally get outside the door, she doesn't want to walk down the stairs because for some reason she has this idea that her shoes gets dirty by going down the stairs. And it's like, and there's this, what's it called in English? You know, like these big machines digging the dirt. Like we just call it a dig machine in Norwegian. Anyways, it's super noisy. I can't hear her. She can't hear me, and it's just it's so annoying. I'm baffled how fragile like routines are in a family with children. It's crazy. Anyways, I've done a ton of stuff on this app actually. Also, by the way, I've gotten into Overmind again. A little bit of more documentation, and we should be good to go with the release. So that's nice to kind of get that off my head, off my brain. Anyways, so I learned something. Let's see, storage browser. Okay, so the way we grab data previously, and it's kind of I've always been like, in the documentation of Firebase, they're saying like, yeah, use own snapshot because then you can use the same logic for the initial fetching and any further updates. But that's not correct, is it? Well, it depends on how you implement it, of course. Like if you implement it in such a way that you just like populate everything directly from Firebase, then that's true. But like we want to grab the initial data first and then show everything at the same time. Anyways, so I previously I had like grabbing snapshot and grabbing the initial data. But now it's different. Now it's only grabbing the snapshot. And I think the thing that made me like go way off here is that I used Firebase quite early. And the way it worked previously is that you didn't have these snapshots. You just had events. So you had single events for when things were added, removed, and changed. And for some reason, I thought this on snapshot would trigger for every entity. So if you had 20 entities in the database, it would trigger 20 times. On the initial load. And that got just stuck in my brain for some reason. But they've changed this. That's why they call it snapshots, because it's okay, give me the initial snapshot, like all 20 things, even though it will still treat it as multiple documents changing, it's still one and the same snapshot. And what I really liked about this is how I modeled this in terms of the dashboard feature. So the dashboard feature now has a loading context where you might or might not have this data. And it's only when you actually have all the data, it moves into a loaded state. And the way it does this is using this evaluate loaded context. So it brings in the loading context and then it checks, do I have all the data? Then I move into the loaded state. And if not, I'll just return the current context. So now these snapshots can happen in any order, at any point. As soon as I have all of them, it will move into a loaded state, which is, this was way better. And simplified a ton of stuff. Also completely remove this concept of, I don't think it's the right way to do it, storage. I had this modified thing So on snapshot, I would use like where modified is after now, and it just doesn't work. There's so many weird things that needs to be taken care of, and I don't think Firebase is supposed to work that way. So now I just grab everything. It doesn't matter when it's modified. And now everything works the way it's supposed to work. So yeah, it's interesting. So I've learned a ton. And I moved back to actually using the doc changes again. Yeah, because I had bugs with removing entities and stuff. Anyways, so what I'm working on now, I'm making a change to the app. I'm making a change. Localhost 3000. Because I got this feedback and it made me think about something. So let's see. Let's move into mobile mode. So now we're actually going to have this to-dos thing. And we're going to have planning. That's the thing I thought about last night. Like we're going to have planning, and planning is you planning the next week, and everything's about, well, the next or editing the current week, and everything's about that week, right? But then you have the actual to-dos, and this is just a list of everything that's happening. And it's not about the planning part. So you won't have these kinds of things inside the to-dos list, because that's the planning part. And you will have all the events, not only the events for that specific week, right? So that, yeah, it's kind of scoped to the week itself and about doing stuff that week. Well, the to-dos list is just all the to-dos. And I've added a new feature. Well, it's not done, but a new feature with the to-dos is that you can add a checklist to them. So that means like you can say, prepare for holiday or something. And that's a to-do, that's the description of the to-do. And then you can say that this to-do, or you can even say like go on holiday, and then you put a date, that's when you leave. And then you say that this to-do should have a checklist. And then in the list of to-dos, you see that checklist, and you can add and remove, and you can check stuff. And you can even like, in planning of a week, you can even say, okay, I'm going to work on this thing. Yeah, I'm not sure about that because it has a date, and currently if you have a date you can't. Yeah, well, think about that. Anyways, my point is I'm going to split it up into two. So let's do that. Let's see, we have the dashboard here. So now to-dos, okay, so we need, this is plan week view, and we're not going to have a plan week view. We are rather going to have to-dos feature. So let's add that. I think that's the first thing we need to do, is to split this up, and we're going to make some adjustments as well to what we have. What this also enables is that you can we can more easily move into an edit to-do state. But yeah, that's for later. I'm not going to do that now. To-dos feature, new file, index.ts, new file, feature tsx, and we're just going to copy the plan week feature. To-dos, and we're not going to toggle a weekday here. Yeah, and now we are not going to have, yeah, it's public. It's on the family Scrum repo. So here, family-scrum-v2. Yeah, so we're not going to have an event anymore. We're just going to allow to-dos to have optionally have a date. We're going to add time as well, optionally have time, and optionally have a checklist. So currently in this to-dos feature, you can only archive the to-dos, I guess. And you should be able to manipulate the checklist. So I guess, okay, let's make the checklist a separate implementation, like not code-wise, but like another iteration. And then we just have archive to do here. So context is planning. No, the context is list, and then we only have archive to do. Let's see. Archiving to do. Yeah, we're going to have more stuff here later, but for now. Oh, we have the user ID. Do we need the user ID? No, we don't need the user ID. That was related to this thing. Oh. Yeah, because we need family ID. That's the thing we need. Initial context. Yeah, we don't need the user ID. We just need the family ID. Okay, cool. So this is our feature. Let's go and just do this as well. This is going to be to-dos feature. Use to-dos. Cool. Okay, so we have our feature now, and in our dashboard, we are going to say to-dos feature. Instead, family ID is the user family ID. And then we are going to create our own to-dos view. And we're going to simplify this as well. We're just going to copy the plan week view because it's basically the same, but we're going to reduce. Well, we're going to change a few things. So we're just going to copy it in first, and then later we can take a look at what's common between these, because there are a few common things, but it's easier to find that common stuff after we've figured out how this is going to work. To-dos view. Yes. Yeah, and this does not need any weeks. Maybe, okay. This is, I'm jumping a little bit around here because I have this idea of how it's going to work, but it requires a few changes. Amongst those changes is removing events. So maybe we should just do that right away. So we have calendar event, TTO. So what we're going to do, we're going to say you might have a date there. You might have time, and I'm storing time as just a string. And like there's a risk with storing it as a string. Because I'm just going to display that string, meaning that if one user uses AM, PM, which can happen, like I'm using my phone on English, not Norwegian, and my girlfriend does, so I have a feeling that we need to deal with that. But at least the time, like a time value is something that we can. I think already we have the tools to make that right. But yeah. How should we deal with that? Okay, I can't think of, I don't want to get stuck on that now. And then we optionally have a checklist. And that's going to be a type of its own. Checklist DTO. And this is an array of very simple. It's going to be a title, and it's going to be completed or not. We're not going to they are not going to be their own entities, like they're not going to have their own IDs and stuff. We're just going to change it out based on index. A really tricky thing though, that I'm a little bit stuck on, is what if two people manipulate the same checklist? If we don't have IDs, we are going to get into an issue there. But I kind of want to say that that's not going to be like the best experience. So what I mean is the naive way of dealing with that thing is to do a transaction. So when you check something, we optimistically update that in the client, and we do a transaction on the server. And on that transaction, we are putting that checklist item in the same state as you have just done optimistically in the client. The problem though is if someone added a checklist item between that, we would use an index to say, oh, this is the one you're actually going to change. But now that index has changed between asking for a transaction and then running the transaction. In between there, someone added a checklist item. So that's a source of bugs. Yeah. So the question is, do I want to make this checklist collaborative, or do I just don't care about that? And if I want to make it collaborative, how would we deal with that? Because we don't really have a concept of... Well, I guess in the database we do actually have console. A to-do is an actual entity, so we could add a collection. Yeah, so we have to-dos, so we could add a collection behind the to-do. But that means when we grab the to-do, we also have to grab the checklist items. So it adds a lot of complexity. So what we could do instead to kind of improve the collaborativeness is that we just use the contents of the title to like toggle the completed state. And then you have the thing like, oh, what if someone changes the well, one thing, what if someone changes the completed state? No, sorry, the title. But that's not possible. You can't change the title, but you could delete it. So I want to check something, I run a transaction, but at that time someone deletes it. But at that time, you could actually, if you don't find it, the thing you want to check, we just remove it, or we ignore it. We don't check it. Maybe that's the way to do it. We just naively use the title. And then you could argue, what if it has two of the same title? But that's kind of weird. Anyways, they are like the same thing. So yeah, let's do that. Let's use the title, and then not making it very collaborative. We'll optimistically update it in the client, and in the transaction, we'll use the title to check it or uncheck it. Well, yeah, and there's one more problem, and that's a bigger problem. A bigger problem is if two people are checking at the same time on the list, and we are optimistically updating it in the client, whenever someone checks, it actually updates the whole to-do, which means that we kind of have to apply the full array of checklist items every time we get a snapshot. So if I check, I optimistically update, I get a snapshot because someone else checked something, my optimistic update is gone. Because on their end, the to-do wasn't updated yet. God damn it. How do I want to deal with this? Problem in the apply to different cars. Might apply to different cars. Oh yeah, I should point out that these checklist items, they are not to-dos in themselves. They are like so you would have like go on vacation, and then you would have a checklist for that, like pack bag, get a new passport, stuff like that. So, but yeah, of course, there could be, yeah, I don't know. One thing I can see to-dos having the same like description, but I can't see like a checklist having the same title, because you wouldn't be able to differentiate the two items in the checklist. But yeah, like anyways, technically it's not the best approach, so maybe we'll need to change it no matter. But yeah, I just can't. Yeah, I have to do this first iteration first and make some simple choices just to get over the hump to kind of get to this new thing where we remove events having a more complex to-do entity, and then we can rather improve the collaborativeness of the checklist. But yeah, but again, maybe we do have to do something about this, because what I'm talking about now is like, it won't work having two people checking the checklist and having it optimistic, because yeah. Well, what we could do, yeah, we could do something. We could say user ID. So, or like modified, which is nice to have no matter. So the thing is, like, the person who actually does the check is added to that item, that checklist item, which means that we can show the avatar, like who actually finished this. And that means that in terms of optimistic updates, that means that when we do apply a snapshot of to do, we go through any checklist items and we only apply changes to the ones that isn't modified by a user. By the user, like me as a user, because then we depend on the optimistic data for that. But that doesn't really work, does it? Well, well, it does. Oh, goddamn. We're going to get stuck in this. We're not going to get past this in this stream. God damn it. Because it's kind of weird that we store the modified user ID if it's not checked. Like, should we still show that this was a person who changed this? God damn it. The best way to deal with this is to actually just create a collection on a to-do, like a checklist collection. And then these are entities in the database. They have their own ID. We still need to deal with optimistic stuff though. No, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. Okay. Okay. So imagine we do that. We allow creating a collection behind the to-do. The problem then is that when we load these to-dos, yeah, collaborative to-dos are not simple. That's for sure. It's kind of funny. Like we could take a completely different approach to this. I was at a conference. Someone worked on collaborative data structure that he applied to the To-Do MVC demo application, and like everyone in the audience joined and started like adding to-dos and changing to-dos and stuff. It was kind of funny. But yeah, that's more related to like the concept of CRDTs, which is, we're actually using that at Code Sandbox, CRDTs. It's a very interesting way to think about collaboration, because you get a ton of additional features. Well, not a ton, but you get a couple of other features as well. You don't only get like conflict-free resolution of data, but you also get a history of all the changes to that data. So you can go to that data in any point in time, and it works offline. So you can build up the data your own way for like a week, and then when you go online, it will conflict-free apply those changes with whatever other changes has been made to that data structure, which is very, very interesting. And there are certain situations where it doesn't do exactly what you expected it to do, but it does do the right thing, like technically. It's really, really cool. Anyways. So, okay, so the problem is whenever we load to-dos, we also need to check. We also need to download the checklist collection, because in Firebase, when you grab a document, you don't get the underlying collections. You have to specifically fetch them as well. And what we could do is we could listen for snapshots on the to-dos. So like, this is interesting. God damn it. I hate when I think about features and the changes are way more complicated than... So we have to-dos update. And that makes it just even more tricky. So I add a new to-do, and now adding that new to-do requires me to add a new snapshot listener for that to-do. It just makes it incredibly complicated. Well, we could store the data differently. So instead of having, yeah, maybe we should do that. So instead of having the to-dos collection, this is the solution. So instead of having, wait, is it the solution? Well, it adds another complexity, but still simpler. So instead of having like one collection behind every single to-do, we can have a checklist collection, which has all the checklist items regardless of to-do. It just has a reference to which to-do it relates to. And that works. It makes it collaborative. We can grab all of them immediately. And if anything changes, like a new to-do is added with a checklist and we add stuff there, it will just work. And it's collaborative. Everybody needs a beer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, event-driven tree of tasks. You can, like, yeah, that's interesting. Though what I'm doing now, at least in terms of like from a UI perspective, it's hierarchical. I hate that word. Hierarchical now. But in terms of data storage, it's like normalized. So you have like a list of to-dos and you have a list of checklist items, and every checklist item references a to-do ID. But the problem there is if you delete a to-do, we also have to go into the checklist collection, and we need to delete all the checklist items related to that to-do. But that's way simpler to manage. That's just in the logic of deleting a to-do or like archiving a to-do. We go in and we archive, basically just delete any document which has that to-do ID as a reference. Okay, we're actually going to do that because I think this needs to be collaborative. So basically we're going to remove events, but we're going to add a new collection called checklist. Yeah, this is the way to do it. I'm positive. We have 10 minutes. Let's finish this. So again, we have a checklist DT. Let's call it checklist item. Checklist item. And yeah, the question is in our data, in our storage. Yeah, I think we're going to apply, we're going to apply those checklist items directly to the to-do it relates to. So from the perspective of the app, it actually consumes a to-do as if the checklist is part of the to-do. But in terms of the database, they are actually separated. Just having references. I do still want, I want to know who actually made the thing completed. I think it's nice to have. Completed by user ID. Completed by user ID. Cool. Yeah, I like this. And then, I removed the calendar events. So, but we're going to change this. So let's add a new thing. Check list update. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, this application is quite simple. Like, it seems simple, which is a good thing. Like, from a user experience, it seems simple. But like at Code Sandbox, we talk a lot about we want to enable people to build applications. So like, you don't have to be like I've been coding for like 10 years or something, and you shouldn't have to be a professional programmer to build something like this. But still, you kind of, well, it depends on how you do it, of course. I'm not making it, I'm not doing the simplest approach, because I'm really concerned about like the patterns we use, testing, like separating the app from the environment and all that kind of stuff, which we don't really need to do. We could just use React and Firebase and build the same thing. But if you want to do things like properly without bugs and stuff, it's very difficult to write like predictable code, testable, predictable. Yeah, it's very difficult from the perspective of someone who just wants to create something, just create an app for the neighborhood, for example. That's what I mean. Like we're moving into a future where code isn't only used by professionals to like build very predictable, safe code bases, or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be used by a lot more people to solve smaller problems where you don't have to have that like insane deep knowledge of writing code. You just need to make things barely work to have a lot of value for people. And I think that's a good thing. Like there's a difference of making a web app that you share with your neighbors than like saying you're a professional building something for like the government or something that everybody in a country is going to use, and kind of just put stuff together. Yeah, I don't know why I started thinking about this. Items. Should we call them items? Checklist, update items. Yeah, let's call it items. Checklist. It's checklist item DTO. Okay, cool. So that's our new thing now. Cool. So let's move to our sandbox, which now has a problem, checklist item, DTO, checklist items. Yeah, so this is interesting. Now these, in terms of our the data structure we expose from our storage effect, we are not going to like separate the checklist items. They're actually going to be part of the to-dos. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a to-do here which actually has a checklist. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a few more to-dos here. We're going to add a to-do that has a date. Let's just do a date now. And let's imagine it has a time. And then we're going to add another to-do. And this to-do, do some listing. And this one is actually going to have a checklist. And it's false. Oh yeah, completed by user ID, that might not be there. Where was that? Completed, false, title. Do this, and let's completed, true. Do that, and then yeah, and this really annoys me. It's like completed is true, which means that now we have a completed by user ID. Let's see if we can actually make that a thing. I'm not sure if this actually works, but let's try. So if I don't think this works with booleans, so title string completed false or completed true, and then we have that thing. Oh, it actually does work. That's awesome. You see that when we're false, it doesn't require a completed by user ID, but if it's true, we actually do have a completed by user ID. What were our user IDs? Users, oh yeah, user 1. Cool. So this is our checklist. We have it in there now, and then we can just remove this. And we don't have add event anymore. We can actually remove that from the interface. Yeah, and we don't, yeah, I removed that. Events. Archive event shouldn't be there anymore. Toggle event participation shouldn't be there anymore. Okay, so we still have, let's just get rid of all this event stuff. Event. Ah, sorry, this is quite a bit of work. Oh, I have to go. I'll try to get, like, I hope I kind of got through what I'm trying to do. And yeah, I'll finish this. It's a lot of like granular work, but we're on a good path now, and hopefully this is something I can get done by tomorrow, and then we can kind of look at it. Yeah, kind of, what's it called? Put it together. Anyways, thanks for following along, and I guess I'll try to be here tomorrow, and yeah, I feel pretty confident I'll get this done by tomorrow. Cool. Bye bye.